Okay, just a reminder, we're still working on problem number 2. Given if tangent theta is 4/5, we're in quadrant 3. We calculated our sine and cosine value from part A and B, and we're just picking up with our half angles C and D now. So the first thing we're going to do is write our formula down, and our original theta was in quadrant 3, so we're going to first of all observe or make a note, let's just say note, that in our given problem we found out that theta was in quadrant 3 by that. Now I'm working with a half angle over here, so if I wanted to divide each of these by 2, then we would have pi over 2, theta over 2, and then remember dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/4 here, so oops, and that's not the equal to bar. Be careful there. 3 pi over 4. Okay, so where would that put us? Where would that put theta over 2? It's in which quadrant? Okay, so if it's between pi halves, which is here, and 3 pi fourths, which is here, we are in quadrant 2. Good, so we're going to make a note of that, because what we need to know about that is recall. All students take calculus, so sine is positive, sine of theta, or sine of theta over 2, is positive in quadrant 2, right? Because we're here. We're going to be here. We're in quadrant 2. And what about cosine of theta? It's negative, so we'll just keep that in mind. That's just some reminders about our sines that we're going to look back on in a minute. Alright, so let's jump over to our formula. We've done pretty much all the background work, and at this point I'm just going to carry down plus or minus. Or I could actually just go ahead and say, what are we finding? The sine of theta over 2, we said theta over 2 is in quadrant 2, so what about the sine of theta? Positive. So at this point or at the very end, I can make a note that I'm only going to be working with the positive of this answer. Now 1 minus our cosine of theta pulled from the previous page is negative 5 over the square root of 41. Just going to put that in red. Then over 2 for our original formula. Okay, just like we did previously, we decided to focus on our numerator and get a common denominator, so we're going to do the same thing. What would be our common denominator? Square root of 41, which would just give me square root of 41 plus, so minus a negative, if you'll let me just minus a negative, is plus 5 over my denominator that I'm just going to carry down. Now what did we do next? We tried to simplify the fraction within a fraction. So we can do that next if we want. Or we can rationalize this denominator first to see if we can get rid of these square roots. So you have an option there. So you can either go on with your reciprocal, or you can rationalize. Let's go ahead and rationalize and see if we can make that numerator a little bit better. So to rationalize, I'll multiply by the square root of 41. We're just going to focus on our numerator for now. And I'm going to make a side note, so I'm going to say rationalize. And here we got common denominator, just to make us some notes. And we're only going to focus on our numerator first. So what would be the square root of 41 times the square root of 41? Good. A square root times a square root would just simplify to 41. And then when I say square root of 41 times 5, it's just going to be 5 square root of 41. What about our denominator? Square root times the square root, we just get 41, and then we just carry down that 2 that's still there. Okay, Now we'll go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal here. And times 1 over 2. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and these cancels. So numerator is going to be the same because it's times 1 up there. And what about our denominator? 41 times 2, which is 82. This is not a perfect square. This, nothing simplifies here. 82 is not a perfect square. We already decided that we're going to use our positive because this is the sine of theta over 2. So this is our solution. Okay, and wrapping up on part D for this number 2. We pull our formula first of all, and I almost forgot this, our plus or minus. All right, now we did all the background work on this. We're going to find out the cosine of the half angle. Now we did a lot of this work over here to find out that our half angle is in quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, we said the cosine theta is going to be negative. So from the beginning of this or at the end of this, make sure you address the sign of the solution. Okay? Alright, now here we go. Let's start plugging things in. So we're going to have 1 plus, what did we say the cosine of theta was from previous? Negative 5 over the square root of 41. And that's still divided by 2. One plus, oh, we're ready to start getting a common denominator next, right? So our numerator, let's get a common denominator, which would be everything over the square root of 41. So that would be square root of 41, this time minus 5. I'm going to choose to rationalize next. So multiply by the square root of 41 over the square root of 41. And you distribute that back. So I'm going to say square root of 41 times the square root of 41 is just going to be 41. Square root of 41 times 5 is going to be 5 square root of 41. Denominator simplifies to 41, and then of course that's all divided by 2. To simplify the fraction over the fraction, we're going to multiply the denominator by the reciprocal. We will do the same in the numerator. These cancel, and we will be left with square root of 41 minus 5 square root of 41 over 82. This is going to be our cosine of theta over 2. And that's it. So compare the previous two answers. And what's the difference? First of all, the sine function is determined by its quadrant, this outside. Whether it's positive or negative is determined by this. And then the only difference in these ended up being the sine value in between there.